and not later for me, because we all know how long it took me to get to sit down in the first place. So I wasn't going to waste any time in finishing this review. Hopefully the next review I get down to is Outlander. We left off with Dance of Thieves by Mary E. Pearson, with Kazi and Jase going to rebuild a Vendon settlement. I had mentioned earlier that he had been like, oh, I can only stay a day. Well, no, he stayed the entire time. Other people came and went, but for some reason he was not going to go until things were done, which I thought was a bit in opposition to his earlier concerns, because he's still a new Patre, and he was so worried about the fact that he was not going to be where he needed to be in the aftermath of his father's death. Him staying, which I love the character building and the character arc that it provides, but it didn't entirely make sense to me, because he still has those obligations. He still has this image that he needs to present in front for the people, and if he's physically not there, how is he creating this united front or presenting himself as the Patre? It doesn't matter. It is not here or there. His problems are his problems. If he doesn't want to go where he's supposed to go, that's whatever. But on the way back to Tor's Watch, Kazi and her cohorts, Ren and Sinove, get held back because Sinove, who had this romance with one of the other Rattan who had gone in another direction at the beginning of the novel, this guy named Eben, they had some kind of a relationship. Like, they wouldn't really acknowledge it. They had a legitimate relationship, yet she's messing around with anything with two legs and something between them and whatever. And so anyways, so she has begun some kind of a cat and a mouse game with one of Jase's guys, one of his brothers. Some of these brothers are blood brothers, some of them are adopted brothers. Neither here nor there. We'll just all call them his brothers. She got distracted and ended up going face first into a pile of horse droppings. So those three hang back so she can get herself put back together. When they catch up to the wagon and the Ballinger crew, they notice that there are raiders tracking them. They are able to basically fight off the raiders. They're able to save the Ballingers from this group of raiders because they had caught on quicker and they were better with fighting and all that kind of stuff that needed to be in defense against the raiders. And then the biggest surprise of all is, like, these raiders aren't normal raiders. These raiders are clean, put together. They are not men who have been on the road and are in desperate need of something, so they're going to steal from somebody else. No, something's up with these guys. And it turns out that the last guy that was killed, who had been battling with Kazi, he was, and if you remember, I was telling you about Jase's sister, Jelaine. This guy, Fertig, was her beau. I'm a little bit confused as to the nature of their relationship. I don't know how invested she was. She claims that she really didn't have much interest in him. It was basically flattering how much interest he was showing in her, when all along it seems that he was just milking her for information regarding Ballinger secrets. Things that she never would have thought not to share, but he was able to use them for his own devices or for whomever he was working. At this particular juncture, they had received a letter saying the queen was on her way. For whatever reason, Fertig and his band of not-so-merry men were sent to attack Jase and his group of travelers. How that has any correlation to the queen coming, I don't know, but that is what they whittle it down to. Is they're like, well, it has to do with the fact that the queen had sent a letter saying she was coming. So now Jase has to go home and tell Jelaine, look, your boyfriend was at the heart of all of these things. He goes back and he kind of banishes her from family functions, which I thought we could have used a whole lot more about her, because I thought that was really intriguing. that she's involved with this dude and it's like a serious relationship, but that he has then betrayed her at every possible moment. They arrive back at Tor's Watch, and Kazi is watching out the window, and there is like the original Ballinger home is this place called Dark Cottage. Dark Cottage is not a cottage. Dark Cottage is like a chateau or something. She sees someone going in there and she says something to Jase about it. And he's like, oh, that was just like a groundskeeper. When in fact, it was Beaufort. And he then goes to Beaufort and he's like, look, I had to lie for you. Like, you're not supposed to be coming out in public. People are not supposed to see you here. They're not supposed to see us together. This little meeting is also an opportunity for him to follow up with Beaufort on the progress of whatever it is Beaufort is working on for him. And what Beaufort has to show him is one weapon. It's like an automatic rifle or something. Not even an automatic rifle, but it's more like just a rifle. And Jase's like, cool, this is great. And I'm taking this with me. It might be your only working prototype, but as you said, you've got plenty of supplies. Like, you will come up with a whole arsenal in no time. This is where we are introduced to certain characters that we don't understand their significance until the end. But you can tell that his interactions with these characters is like, yeah, nobody really wants him to take this gun or the ammo, but at the same time, nobody wants to tell him no, because if they do, they're going to give something away that they don't want to give away. He walks off, but this is where we might meet this guy named Zane, who is kind of like a driver, a delivery driver. I don't really know what his official term is, but he drives stuff. He has greater significance later, but I can't get into that yet because I need to get some other background information for you. At some point after all of this, Jase takes Kazi to this place called the Arena, where it's kind of like a black market of sorts. Not really a black market, but it's where people sell and trade. Not exactly legal, but this is where his family makes the majority of their money. While she's there, she bumps into the king of Icelandia, and this is that farmer king. I just couldn't remember the name until I just ran across it in my notes. She ends up stealing a piece of paper from him. Like, honestly, stealing is compulsory for her. Sometimes she does it for her own sake. Sometimes she does it because she feels like people deserve it. She doesn't trust him, and she had seen him talking to somebody, and she was like, I want to know what they were talking about. So she steals this piece of paper from him. All it says is Devereaux 72, which we don't really know what this means. She thinks that maybe it's something about trade, whatever. But also at the Arena, Jase meets back up with Garvin, and Garvin is like, I remember where I saw her. And she had an instance with somebody when they were rebuilding the settlement, and this girl called her 10, and she's like, don't talk about it in front of Jase. So she's able to play it off there. But now that Garvin is like, I know who she is. She's this thief named 10. He's like, now I'm feeling betrayed. They come back to Tor's Watch, and they have this big blowout, and she gives him the whole sob story behind her upbringing, because at this point she had lied about her parentage. I think she said like her dad was a general and her mom was some other kind of bigwig, and she's upset with him because she knows that he's harboring Beaufort. She doesn't actually talk about her problems with him, but he comes after her, and this causes her to word vomit her entire sob story. And then this is where Zane comes into play, because Zane was the guy who had taken her mother. They had been at the market earlier selling their wares, and she distinctly remembered him, so that when he came back later that night, she knew exactly who he was and where she'd seen him. She asks Jase, I know exactly, because he accuses her of kind of making things up, and she's like, did I make this up? And she describes Zane to a T, and she's like, do you know anybody like that? Because she knows that he's letting the Provisi shelter at Tor's watch? And he's like, no, I have no clue. But he absolutely does, just like with Beaufort. He's lying through his teeth. That night, she decides to go to Dark Cottage with Ren and Sonove and really check things out. While checking out Dark Cottage, they found an entrance to the tunnels. This is when she realizes that door that Jase said was just an exit to where they'd already been was a lie, and inside was Beaufort. And so she's like, okay, I don't know what I'm gonna do, but not only is Beaufort there, but this guy named Barr is there, and I think Barr is the guy responsible for Ren's family's deaths, like directly responsible for their deaths. And she's like, I don't know how Ren is going to handle this. Along the line of this story, we are told that Jase had hired a new cook and the cook's husband, because this cook could cook some kind of meal that's one of Kazi's favorites. I knew right away this cook wasn't what she seemed. And I was like, well, maybe this is the queen in disguise. It wasn't the queen in disguise. It was this girl named Natia, who is also Rattan. And then the husband is Eben. When their identities are made known to Kazi, she's like, this whole husband and wife thing, that's just a ploy, right? Like, no, we're actually husband and wife. Then we get nothing else about that. It's just like, but I thought he was in a pretty serious relationship with one of these other girls. How did this happen? How did they get to the point of being together? Like, to being in love and getting married in a matter of like a month? It might not even, it could have been like 2 weeks. But I thought that was rather confusing. I would have enjoyed more explanation. Now Kazi and her band are like, what are we gonna do? We have to arrest him. But before all of that, what Kazi overhears when she gets down in the tunnels and discovers them in their hideout is that they have nefarious business going on, that they are using the Ballingers, and the Ballingers have no idea what's coming. So she's like, Jase, meanwhile, because we have both perspectives, like alternating chapters, we leave Kazi only to have Jase meeting up with Zane, and he's like, what in the world is going on here? And he gets Zane to admit that he, working for somebody else who we don't know who this person is, he had been the one to pay the labor hunters, and he'd also been the one to pay the raiders. We don't know why, but whoever is plotting has it out for the Ballingers, and he used Zane to have his ends met. Sorry, according to my notes, Devereaux, whoever Devereaux is, he doesn't know who's behind all this, but Devereaux is the person who gave him the money for at least the raiders, probably even the labor hunters. Kazi and her friends put their plan into action, and they go to arrest Beaufort, only to stumble across Beaufort, Barr, and then the rest of the scholars, as they're called. And that involves this dude named Phineas, who I really don't know how he fits in, because all of these guys, aside from Beaufort, nobody knew that they were still around. But even with all of the history given, Phineas is never mentioned. He's just this young guy hanging out with them and is part of that scholar group. A guy named Chiva Cardos and a dude, I think his name is Sarva. I can't read my own handwriting. It's kind of squished there at the end. But we have those 5 guys, and she did not know Sarva, Cardos, and Phineas were gonna be there, but she's like, wow, what a boon. They've got them, and in order to do this, remember when she got bit by that dog? She sent her friends off to get her some kind of remedy. What they were given, they didn't understand what they were given, because the thing that she had sent them off for, they were not able to get. Instead, they came back with something else that they'd been given. So they were like, wow, this knocked her out pretty good. We'll just put it in the Ballinger's drinks or whatever, and it'll knock them out. We'll take our captives and we'll leave, no problem. Well, yeah, somebody caught on. I think it was Jase. Somebody caught on that things were not right in the state of Denmark. They switched out the drinks, so they never actually got put to sleep. And I guess it's a good thing because, as I said, Kazi and her friends had no clue what they were working with, and apparently whatever they were working with was deadly. Not intentionally trying to kill the Ballingers, but yeah, it's a good thing Jase cottoned on pretty quickly. The Ballingers confront Kazi and her friends as they are trying to leave. They're all like, no, you're not standing in a way, and you know what? We're going to take Jase with us. So Jase is our leverage because you don't want to kill the Patre. Obviously, the Ballingers are none too happy with Kazi, and they are cursing the very ground that she walks on the day she was born. So they're on their way, and she tries to tell Jase what she'd heard. He's like, basically, their treachery is your treachery. They don't really end on good terms, but he does acknowledge her attempts to do good. But there's a lot of tension there, a lot of tension between Ren and Bar, and she's goading him all the time. And then there's just tension in general. A skirmish does occur, and in the end, it has to do with Phineas, and he's talking nonsense. Like, he's saying things that nobody quite understands. They don't know what to make of what he's saying, but his cohorts are like, don't say another word. And before he can, Beaufort has stabbed him in the back with something. He has some more dying words that Kazi can't make heads or tails out of. From here, they have to cross what is called Sentinel Valley. I don't know if Sentinel Valley is specific to this battle that Beaufort initiated that made him a fugitive, or if this is where all the battles happen, but specifically in this instance, Sentinel Valley is the place where that massive war occurred odd years earlier from, I'm assuming, the preceding series. The superstition of the Vendans is that the deserters would be sucked into the underworld because the dead recognized them and would pull them under. So the captives, not too happy about having to cross Sentinel Valley, but they're met by a troop of people. Honestly, I don't know who they are. There are a lot of different groups of people. All I know, because reading other people's reviews, is that they are headed up, and this dude was briefly mentioned at the very opening of this novel, but if it hadn't been for me doing a little bit of research, it never would have rung a bell. Like, I would not have connected the dots and seen that full circle moment of we start here, we end here. But this guy, I think his name is Grizz, who played some kind of a part in that first series. They are escorted to the Queen, but then one of the guys, it's either Cardos or Bar, one of them gets carried off by some creature, and I guess, like, eaten or something. I don't know if he's actually dead or not. He's eluded death once. Maybe he's gonna elude death again, but for all intents and purposes, he's dead. They arrive, and Kazi meets the Queen because basically Jase and his family are traitors. They've been harboring fugitives. She's like, well, I want to speak up for him. She calls Jase in. They have their own little combo. And she's like, well, and this is all for Kazi's sake. It's like a little act that they're putting on. And she had told him this in their little tete-a-tete. And she was like, why don't I formally acknowledge the Ballingers as a kingdom, but I don't necessarily trust you. So now in the group setting, she's doing the same thing. She's like, well, what if I did this? Like, I would like to do this. However, I don't have confidence that you guys aren't going to turn your backs on us and cause trouble again. So I think what I really need to do is send somebody with you to keep you in line. And she's like, Kazi. So yeah, Kazi's like, I don't know if that's the best idea. I left a good bit of bad blood behind, but sure, whatever. I love this dude. And that's kind of where we end, is she's like, I love you. And he's like, yeah, I know. And I love you too. And that's where we're ending. Obviously, the story is not over because we have all that follow through with who's framing the Ballingers. I enjoyed this book. There were some elements that I felt lost with. There were some elements that I thought needed a little bit more. I was fascinated by the idea of the ancestors coming from the stars and of the Ballinger children like crossing the desert or whatever they crossed in order to get where they needed to go. And I'm like, so do I need to read the first series? Like, is that really going to explain the things that I don't get? I mentioned some qualms at the very beginning of this review, and one is apparently Kazi can see and or hear ghosts. I think she can do both. I didn't understand this ability. At first, I was like, is this something specific to her? But then it seems like perhaps the other Rattan also have the ability to see ghosts. And then I couldn't tell if what she was seeing was new ghosts or she could just see any time death had happened, like the residual ghosts. I don't understand what this capability was supposed to represent or do to further the novel. It was really interesting, but it felt a bit superfluous considering it didn't move the story forward. It didn't contribute to Kazi's character arc or her character development. I thought cool things were happening, but were never resolved. That is that. Thanks for joining me.